Hey, what's going on, buddy?
Yo, what's up, dude?
Not much. Just getting excited for this episode. And, I'm Paul Varacchi.
And I'm Stephen Koepfer, and this is Film Fights with Friends, our bonus in-between seasons episode. Who would have thought we'd survive this long?
This marks 26. That's a pretty good first season. And we are already gearing up and in pre-production for season 2.
If you count the pilot, it's 27.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, totally.
So, and season 2 is just already starting to look pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I'm very excited for it.
I'm excited to be back at the table here, though.
I know. I'm weird. I'm nervous.
It's been months.
I'm nervous. You intimidate me.
What can I say? We all have our things. Dude, so this episode, what we're doing here for the beginning, this bonus episode, it's actually a really needed discussion.
It is. It's especially in this industry, and since we are both stunt people, so It's a needed discussion in the overall of the industry, but is a very important discussion when it comes to the stunt world.
Yeah, for sure, and that is set safety, and throughout all of our guests, right? Throughout all the whole season, almost every single guest from all the different film departments that we've had on the show, the issue of set safety has come up.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think the common thread has been, there's been two common threads from across the departments. One is there's no hierarchy when it comes to speaking out about safety issues. You must say something.
Right. And then the other is, are you willing to get fired for speaking up?
Yes. Yeah, and that's an unfortunate thing that has to do with the filmmaking culture. Like both of them, people are always afraid to screw up their job, their status, their reputation, whatever, by speaking out of turn. But when it comes to safety, you have to speak out of turn.
Yeah,
that is the one issue on a film set that everybody is equally responsible for.
Yeah,
right. And then the second thing is, if you do speak up, are you willing to deal with the consequences?
Which is possibly losing your job.
Sure. Yeah. So we're going to have clips from 5 different episodes where we talk about this issue. And one from Doc Duhame, stunt coordinator.
And another one from David Tutman.
Cinematographer.
Yep.
Larry Rosenthal, also stunt coordinator, but this one is from the perspective of working with children.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then rigging with Brett Copes. And what's the fifth one? The fifth one, Firearms.
Oh, with Scott.
With Scott Boyette.
Yeah. Which, again, is a pressing issue right now because the documentary just dropped on Hulu, right, about Helena Hutchins. And
the Rust incident.
Yep. And then, again, that was...
Yeah. That's what brought it into the forefront most recently. So we get into that chat with Scott a little bit. But before we get into that, dude, what's going on with you?
Man, I've actually been kind of busy. I went to the Rokimoto toy launch, which was a lot of fun, and that is Mike Becker's new toy line. It's the guy who created Funko, and it's this. He's got these little guys right here, and they come in this cute little ramen bowl, and you open it up, and then they get these little figures, and then if you get like the special one, it's the figure eating ramen noodles.
So for those watching this on YouTube, not watching it on YouTube, Paul's holding one up to the camera.
Oh yeah, sorry.
No,
that was a lot of fun. There was a lot of cool people there, and it was kind of like to get into it was like the days of old. You got to get your ass up, go wait online, get a bracelet, go back, wait online, and get in. So I had a lot of fun, waiting with all my buddies.
Cool, man.
Yeah.
Was Rocco there?
And Rocco was not there. I was kind of there representing the both of us.
Because you've been doing some stuff with Rocco. Rocco, by the way, if you go back to episode the American Sports Story episode, that's Rocco that we're talking about.
Yeah, he was the APM on that show.
Yeah, and the football coordinator.
And Rocco and I have actually been going to conventions, and we have a table, and he and I have been selling, a bit of our collections, Funko Pops, and just kind of having fun.
Cool, dude.
Yeah.
Nice.
Future may expand on that, but who knows where we're going to go.
Yeah.
What about you, man? What you been doing?
Let's see. Since the last time we recorded this, which is like many months ago, I was on a show that I can't announce yet, but I got to double the great Jonathan Banks on a show, which is really cool. So if you guys don't know who Jonathan Banks is, you
just we don't want you as a listener.
He doesn't mean that.
We want you. Please. I don't. Please stay.
Most people know him from Breaking Bad,
but you should feel shame.
Yeah, or Better Call Saul. But yeah,
Beverly Hills Cop,
dude. Yeah, definitely a legend in the business. So it was cool to work with him. So that was pretty neat. And what else has been going on? I taught my intro to stunt department lecture at School of Visual Arts in the master's program, directing program again.
Nice.
And they're bringing me in to do the undergrad students too, like to help prep them for their thesis films. So that's cool. Awesome. Yeah,
that's right. I actually taught a weapons disarm class for New York combat stage and scene.
Screen. Scenes for the screen.
We got to redo that.
Jared. Okay, you all know who Jared Kirby is because you saw him in our shot-for-shot remake of Troy.
That's right.
But this is at Jared's school.
Yes. So Jared was nice enough to bring me in as a special guest.
So and just we're going to request that Jared shorten the name of his school.
Did he recently change it? I don't know. Jared, I'm an asshole.
But listen, man, it's like if you want to learn sword work, weapon work for stage, Jared's the man.
Jared is the man for sure.
Yeah.
Which is why I went to him for the Troy thing, because I'm like, I don't know how to use these.
Yeah, totally. You know what else happened? We have been encouraging people to comment and give reviews and write quotes and stuff like that on our various social medias. So if you're not following us, please follow us, like us, subscribe to us, write reviews, comments, all that kind of shit. But we did get a few, so we're going to read to you right now. This is one from Apple Podcast, and it's by Swamp Thing.
Swamp Thing. I like that.
He spells it with a Y. Thing. Swamp Thing. We love you, Swamp Thing. I have no idea who this guy is, but here's his review. Awesome, folks. Awesome interviews. Love the show. Among many live entertainment and production hats I wear, I'm a longtime stage combatant and fight choreographer with minimal to no experience in the film and stunt side except for some short film stuff. I've got my entire fight staff listening to this show for insight, lessons, great role models and inspiration. Thanks a ton for putting out this show. Also, Jared, same Jared, is a good friend. That's how I found out about you guys. Loved the Troy project. There we go.
Awesome.
Thanks, dude.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, thanks for the review. That was on Apple Podcast.
That was very nice.
Then we had a YouTube commenter, WM Strength Coach. He's actually got a pretty decent YouTube. You guys should check it out if you're into the strength training stuff. He commented on one of our episodes. Love these chats, guys. Please keep it up. So much valuable info and interesting people with great stories, advice, and experiences.
Wow, you're going to love this episode.
Yeah.
It's filled with it.
Yeah, totally, man. So anyway, thanks for commenting, WM Strength Coach. I think he's an aspiring or working stunt performer.
Oh, well.
I don't know who he is, but yeah, totally.
Keep going.
Yeah, keep watching, dude. And thanks for commenting. And comment again. Don't just stick to one comment.
Don't quit commenting.
Yes. Hey, my good friend Stefan Kesting, who also has a really great podcast, a martial arts podcast, specifically Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but he kind of goes into different topics.
What's it called?
The Stefan Kesting podcast? I don't know. I forgot because I just know it as his podcast.
That's funny.
But he's a great dude. He's up in Canada. He's a firefighter.
Cool.
BJJ black belt. He's been around forever. People will know him. He has a lot of instructionals out and stuff like that. He's also a winner of the Canadian Bravery Medal. I think it's what it's called.
What's that?
He did some cool shit as a firefighter, I guess, and got a medal from Canada for it.
Cool.
But the dude's amazing. He's actually got one kidney. He had a kidney removed for some medical issues, and he has a new book out called Perseverance, which I'll hold up for the camera for those watching. Mm. And this is about his solo trek across the Canadian subarctic over about 2 months.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's actually just came out a week ago or a couple days ago, like less than a week ago. It's already on the bestseller list. And we have this very copy that we're going to give away to one of our Patreon members.
How are we going to do that?
Well, we've got all our Patreon members here.
Nice.
We're going to do a little raffle style. So let me shake it up.
Shake.
And you can pick one. And we'll see who wins it, man. And we'll send this book to you. Assuming you give us your mailing address. Oh, do I have to read it? Oh, it's Naz.
Naz!
Hey, Naz.
Nice.
Awesome. Naz, you got a book coming.
Very cool. Awesome,
cool.
Naz.
Yeah, that's sweet, dude.
That's funny.
Cool. So listen, we've got other giveaways and shit.
Speaking of Naz, you want to know, Naz did something awesome for me. I reached out to Naz. He's an amazing guitar player.
Yeah.
So he knows a lot about guitars. And I have a guitar that I have signed by Jimmy Buffett when I worked for him, and it's signed by Derek Trucks and Susan Tedeschi as well.
When you worked for him, you were his personal chef for a while.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to, I have a daughter now, and I wanted to start to relearn how to play the guitar for her, and I didn't want to play that and mess up the signatures. So I reached out to Naz for advice because he's, the guitar guru that I know outside of my friend Bobby, who's the sound engineer for Derek Trucks.
Right.
But I don't like to bother him too much. So I reached out to Naz, and he gave me some great advice and pointed out, a guitar for me to grab. And I was like, okay, let's do it. And then he ended up, the kind soul that he is, he bought me the guitar.
Oh, wow.
And he gifted it to me. Yeah.
Oh, sweet.
So, Naz, just awesome shout out to you for that, man. Thank you so much.
Oh, so karma. He won the book back.
Right. And he won the book. And then,
it's not as expensive as a guitar, but
is there? Well, no. And then when it came in, he brought it to his buddy, and he had all the acoustics and the electronics and stuff, everything checked out. Like, super nice guy. Naz, you're the best, man. Thank you.
Awesome. Cool. Very cool, man.
Yeah. You
got to play sometime on the show.
No. I'm embarrassed playing for my daughter, and she asked for it. Like,
Daddy, play the guitar. You're like, get the fuck out of here.
I have to I tell my wife, I'm like, put on earmuffs. Yeah. I was like, I'll play for her. I was like, it's weird.
Cool. We have an awesome, before we jump into these clips, we have an awesome season 2 in store. We're going to have our first ever Star Wars episode. We don't want to reveal who the guest is yet, but it's pretty amazing.
I mean, I'm surprised that you went for Star Wars first. We have a Star Trek guest coming on the show.
We do have another Star Trek episode.
Yeah, this is going to be a great season coming up.
It's a Strange New Worlds episode. There's a hint. There's a hint for you.
We have
the Star Wars episode has to do with Andor season 2. There's a hint for that too.
And then we also have a director coming on.
Yes,
that's our opening episode. We can actually.
Well, yeah.
Can we spoil that?
Yeah, we can spoil that.
We'll spoil that.
That's going to be season 2 premiere.
Yeah.
Riley Stearns.
Yeah.
Who is, by the way, also a BJJ black belt.
The director of Art of Self-Defense.
And writer.
Yeah.
Oh,
this is going to be a great episode. I also freaking love that movie.
Dude, that movie is awesome.
I love that movie. It's like the dark version of the Foot Fist Way.
Yes, 100%. I actually described it to somebody like that. I said, Foot Fist Way is like that comedic movie that's just like 5 degrees past reality.
It has that Napoleon Dynamite tone.
Yes, and it's like, if you're in the martial arts industry like we are, it's so close to reality, but just past reality a little bit that it's kind of scary. This movie, The Art of Self-Defense, is the same, but in a really dark way. It really highlights how this industry can go bad.
Especially if you get involved with the wrong people.
Yes. It's such a good movie. And so if people haven't seen that movie, you have a head start right now. Go watch that movie.
So that way you know what we're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. And he's a BJJ black belt. We've had a lot of BJJ black belts and BJJ practitioners. Isn't it interesting how many, I don't know if is it because we're martial artists, we're attracting them, or does the industry attract these people? We had Hugh Fitzgerald, Preston Thomas, who thankfully, thank you, Preston, who referred us to Riley Stearns.
Yes.
Because they train jiu-jitsu together. But Preston is a jiu-jitsu guy.
I think it's becoming...
Josh, who you just heard on our previous episode on the season finale, also BJJ black belt.
I think it's also because jiu-jitsu is becoming more a kind of like going to the gym.
Yeah.
For the new age,
Yeah.
instead of without saying you go to the gym, you've just been like, I'm going to go to jiu-jitsu class.
And I also think maybe for people like us in sort of the art making creative world, like grappling, jiu-jitsu, judo, being more improvisational and being more sort of cerebrally engaging, you know what I mean? Like rather than just hitting the treadmill for like 20 minutes and being bored to death, unless you're listening to this podcast on the treadmill.
I think it's also a little less intimidating than when you go to start learning something and the thought of getting hit in the head a lot.
Yeah.
Like boxing or whatever, as opposed to jiu-jitsu where you have a chance to tap before you get hurt.
Yeah.
So
nobody. You see, in jiu-jitsu, there's nothing like no mas.
Yeah. But like, take it easy.
But in boxing, it's like, if you quit, then you're a baby.
Especially if or you're just starting at the wrong place and they bully you into being tough instead of
sure,
taking you through the steps.
So we are really looking forward to that interview. We haven't done it yet.
Not yet.
But it will be the season premiere. Season 2 premiere.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's going to be an awesome premiere.
Dude.
I can't wait.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be great to talk to
him. And I've watched, it's interesting. I can't wait to talk to him about it because I've watched his other movies too. And I see some common threads.
Yes.
That I'm looking forward to diving into.
Definitely the student-teacher relationship.
And well, I don't want to give away too much, but the culty nature of like all 3 movies kind of deal with this sort of darker side of like groups.
I was going to say like the Mormonism
groupthink, dark side of groupthink. But anyway, so we're really looking forward to having Riley on the show, and season 2 is going to kick ass. But before we get to season 2, let's do a little safety recap of season 1. And before we get into it, we're going to put a link in the show notes for a bunch of different safety resources that you listeners can click and learn more about the things we're talking about. Industry-wide safety bulletins and organizations, that focus on safety in the entertainment industry. So we'll have them all linked in the show notes, the Event Safety Alliance and the Technical Standards Program and all the people that are dealing with safety in this industry.
And there's a lot of committees. You're on one.
I'm on the New York Stunt Safety Committee local for SAG-AFTRA, and I'm also on the National Stunt Safety Committee for SAG-AFTRA. And then I'm the chair of, on the national committee, I'm the chair of the sort of, well, it's called it's a subcommittee chair position, but really it's just a bunch of us working on trying to develop a national standard for set medics, which surprisingly enough, there is none.
That's crazy.
And even the AMPTP contract services safety bulletins, they don't have one for set medics. So there's legit no national standard for what level of training and experience a set medic should have. So
could they just hire somebody that's like CPR?
Yeah, you can hire your buddy who's like CPR first aid and never had to deal with a trauma ever. And even the SAG-AFTRA contract is very open-ended and nondescript about it. So these are things we're trying to change. And there's obviously lots of challenges involved in this because for example, because SAG doesn't have a national standard, IATSE doesn't have a national standard, DGA, nobody has a national standard, right? So it's really left up to the locals. So like with IATSE, each local has its own determination of what level of training. Like New York, we have very high level of training,
right,
regarding what we require in set medics, but other jurisdictions don't. A lot of non-union productions don't even have medics. It's a huge issue.
So who has the final, what supersedes all of it? Who has the final say of what you have to do?
That is the big question, right? So it depends on if it's a union signatory and who the union and what union it is that you're a signatory to, and then it also gets into local legal jurisdictional issues, like if you're in a right to work state, they can't really say, we're not going to hire you because, there's the whole right to work issue. So it's hard to state minimum standards in right to work states. So like a lot of established safety protocols that have been established by either, let's say, contract services or ANSI, which is the American National Standards Institute. They're the ones that basically, if you fuck up with OSHA, they're going to look at the ANSI standards, right? Did you follow the standard? So a lot of these standards, unfortunately, don't even come into play until after there's an incident. A lot of productions aren't looking at this stuff beforehand. And so one of the things...
Like with John Brenniker when he fell.
Yeah. Sure. There were violations.
There was no medic, right? There was no ambulance. There was no ambulance. My mistake.
Yeah, for example, it's not a requirement to have an ambulance on set, right? Still. And maybe you don't need an ambulance every day. Right. I mean, that's debatable. We could debate that. I think the cost of an ambulance is easily worth giving up one catering station, on a production. The Army Corps of Engineers, for example, like if you look at comparative industries, the Army Corps of Engineers says if you can't get a person to a trauma center within 5 minutes, you must have an ambulance there. 5 minutes is their time frame, right? So
technically, like at a fight, you would want two. So when one's out, you still have one there. Exactly.
So like when I used to be an event supervisor for mixed martial arts, and when I was working with the Association of Boxing Commissions, you always have two ambulances on set, right? Because if one ambulance goes to take a fighter to the ER,
then you'd have to stop the fight until it comes back.
To stop the fight,
right?
Until or you have two, right? So these kinds of considerations are unfortunately not part of the culture in the film industry. And it's a multi-layered problem. It has to do with jurisdictions, local laws, union differences. And
so it almost sounds like that even if you had a national standard, you'd still have to fight it on a local level to make sure it passed on a set.
Yeah. So
that's crazy.
So for example, like I'm on the national work group that's writing the first ever national standard for weapons on set. This was all established after Rust.
Yes.
Right. And hopefully by October, I think we're going to have a draft that's ready for public review. But the point is even when that national standard gets accepted, ratified, and becomes, let's say, the ANSI standard that OSHA will use, it's still up to productions to follow it.
Right.
Right. So it really becomes you have to have a standard, right? So people know what to follow. But the bigger challenge is actually
enforcing it,
is getting the culture to embrace following the standard. Right. And so what you'll see I
love how you say following. I'm like, enforce it.
Well, the enforcement comes down to
just having a guy there.
Yeah.
That works directly for you guys.
Yeah.
That's like, no.
Well, I think that's part of there's a law passing in California right now that's going to require, as a result of Rust and other things, that's going to require having a safety administrator advisor. I don't know what they're going to title it, but a safety coordinator for each production. Because right now it's up to the AD, right? The AD is in charge of safety, but the AD, they don't have enough to focus on.
Right.
You know what I mean?
They're in charge of almost everything.
Yeah, exactly. And stunt coordinator deals with safety on stunt days when there's stunts on set, but that's not every day.
Right.
Right. So I think, but the fact that might be the case in California highlights the problem. That's like a local solution, but it's not a culture-wide solution. So I think what you're going to see in these clips that we highlight today are the fact that there needs to be a cultural change, right? That it has to be embraced by everyone from every department, from bottom to top, above the line, below the line. Everybody. It makes no difference where you are in the pecking order of things. If you're a background person and you see something unsafe, you need to say something.
Right.
Right. So what's our first clip, Paul?
Oh, I'm like, let's see. We got our buddy, Doc Duhame.
Yes. Doc. We had a great conversation with Doc. The episode was episode 5, and we talked about stunt coordinating on Ray Donovan, but we got into a big chat about his history in the business and safety issues that arose for him. So let's go to the video tape.
When is it time to say no? When is it time to say either, hey, we need to rethink this, or barring them not willing to do that, when is it time to side out? The problem with this isn't certainly everybody that's coordinated, and most everybody that does stunts has been faced with It's like, I'm not quite sure about this. Everybody else seems to be okay with it. I don't want to be the one to pull the trigger and go, hey, we need to take more time to think about this. So when is it time to speak up? I mean, that's something everybody needs to start answering for themselves. And for me, it was when my best friend got burned on Iron Eagle so badly we thought he was going to die.
Oh wow!
Wow, you know?
I didn't know
and it
anything.
was like,
That's crazy.
You know, so after that,
what was the burn? What was the scene?
It was it was a fictitious Arab country, and the whole setup, and the sun was coming in on a jet fighter and was blowing everything up, and it was in Israel.
So he was on the ground.
Pardon me?
He was on the ground.
My buddy, yeah, and he was running between a couple of explosions. The explosions had gone off. They were unbelievably huge. I mean, like there were these troop tents that got
the effects of that movie were insane. Like that was, and for those of you who don't know, Iron Eagle is a fighter movie. So we're talking about a guy coming in on a jet, shooting missiles from his jet at people running while they're exploding. So these are the explosions we're talking about that this guy.
Yeah, copy that. And but there was a problem bringing exotic stuff into Israel. So the effects guys.
You guys were shooting on location in Israel back then.
Yeah, at a military base called Pamrachim. Yeah, 1985.
And the late Lou Gossett Jr., obviously, if those of you who didn't know, Iron Eagle.
Yeah, yeah. So what happened in hindsight, we know now what happened was basically 55-gallon drums wrapped with 100-grain primer cord with a cube of C4 on the top in the middle of each one of these tents. Boom, boom, they go up. We're waiting for it to die down. It dies down. I light Keith. Off he goes. He's doing a partial. He's doing back and an arm, running, in the midst of all this fire. And what had happened was when you use concussive explosives, what it essentially does is for a millisecond, it blows the oxygen out of a large part of the area where the fuel, and so now you have all this unburnt fuel on the ground, and it reignited as Keith was running through it, and he got caught in this inferno.
Wow.
Yeah.
So on that, when you just explained how big this was, if you were to shoot this now in modern time, like now,
right?
How would that be shot differently? With all those,
man.
So
that's a whole other podcast.
No, so that's why it's. I feel like that now to get those same results is not as just we'll just some C4, a little bit of gas, and we'll make it work.
Well, I remember on Ray Donovan, we were talking about safety, and you said to me, it's when people are doing the quote unquote simple gags where they get complacent and they we've done this a million times, it'll be fine. And you said to me, it's on the simple ones where you need to take pause, take a step back, and recheck everything, because that's when the errors happen.
Yeah, it's definitely a big part of it. But to answer that question, Paulie, I would say the difference is testing. Mm-hmm. We test now. Mm-hmm. We know exactly what people are getting into, and more or less, I will just say that's the big answer. But you're right, man. Steve, I gotta tell you, somebody, Lauren Janes, one of the co-founders of the Stunts Association, Double Steve McQueen, brilliant stuntman. We were working one time, and I don't remember what show it was or anything, but I was diving through a window, like just a window. I mean, open window. Like the window was open. I'm just diving through the hole. And he goes, this is what you got to watch out for. You got to watch out for that you're not too high and you don't hit your head on the top of the sill.
Catch your legs on the way out.
A friend of mine, that's a good idea. A friend of mine did that one time, years ago, and ended up paralyzed. And the guy was like a gymnast or something, but it was just a freak thing, And that always
spiked his head. He spiked his head on the window frame.
I saw an accident in a video of where a guy jumped out the window, but he didn't engage his core and lift his legs up, and his legs hit the window, hit the, and he just went down.
Well,
Instead of going probably, out, he caught his legs and just slid down the fucking side of the house. I was like, God,
dude, if you just looked at what were we just talking about, the first show with Hackman? Yeah, that happened to me in Narrow Margin. I was diving out of a window of like a train stop out in the wilderness, And what happened was my knee pads caught the windowsill and just slapped me to the ground, and my coat came over my head. But I got up and kept going, and it's in the movie, because it looked gnarly. It looked like I hit my.
I love Doc, man. Doc is awesome. I mean, he talked about his friend almost dying, obviously,
right.
But I think when he said there comes a time when you just have to sit back and say, like, wait a minute, let's dial it back, right? Because he mentioned, like, if you're thinking, I don't know about this, this doesn't feel quite right, but I'm going to suck it up and do it because the pressure's on. But, the thing is, like, if you're wondering to yourself, there are probably other people wondering to themselves. And that is how incidents happen, right? When multiple people are having concerns and nobody addresses the concern, right?
That's how when we go into Brett, we talk about the 4. That's how 4 rules can get broken.
Yeah.
By 3 people not saying anything.
Well, and I think everybody in some way, shape, or form brought up the fact that you can cheat in a sense where you're doing something wrong, but there is no incident.
Right.
You have these near misses or no near misses, and you're just getting away with it. And you start to believe that what you're doing is right.
Well, almost a very example at its most safest, right, is when Jared and I were doing the Troy thing and he was swinging the stick over my head.
Yeah.
And we both knew every take it was getting closer. But every take we felt more comfortable, so we weren't saying anything about it.
Right.
Until he nicked me in the face.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But it's like, if on the first one I was like, you're getting kind of close, it wouldn't have changed anything.
Right. No, it's true. It's called normalization of deviance, which is like when you're deviating from what's safe and getting away with it. And you start to think that is actually safe.
Right.
You're just getting lucky, So speaking of that, David Tutman, cinematographer. It's like learning. I did not know until this clip that the camera department has the highest mortality rate of any department on a film set.
That is really scary.
Yeah. More often than not, if there's an incident where somebody dies, it's the camera operator.
Right? Yeah. The guy watching.
Yes. And the same thing. And you'll see in this clip when David says, everybody's talking about safety. But it's just talk.
Right.
A lot of times it's just talk.
Is anybody doing anything about it?
Yeah. So let's go into this clip with David Tutman, cinematographer.
Here we go.
Everybody's always talking about safety and the safety of the crew and this and that. And we just had that horrible accident a couple of weeks ago in Georgia where that armored car flipped because no one did anything wrong, but the wheels locked or something really not stunty happened that caused it. But people got wickedly injured, and a beloved grip in Los Angeles died going home last week after his second 14-hour day in a row.
Yeah, and, it was on 911, I think.
Yeah,
it's so horrible.
It's horrible.
I have there have been days when we've worked long days, and I'm just like, you know what, I'm going to take 20-30 minutes in my car before I get on the road.
Yeah, and the companies are getting better about hotels around in the New York area. Certainly, if anyone needed safety rides, were universal on the job I just did. It was a night job, and half the crew at times was getting safety rides. Personally, I've never had a safety ride. I have a 40-mile drive pretty much each way. I will rest if I need to. I knock on wood. I've been very decent and not gotten woozy on the road. I know people who've talked about falling asleep on their way home and have survived it, and ended up in a ditch without getting hurt. Thank God. But it's a big thing. And, I'm talking to 2 guys who assume risks at work as stunt people. You're saying, yeah, you can dump that tray of metal objects on me as I'm sitting there. Paul just did a thing. It was a pretty gentle stunt, but he was the line of hot Chinese food for so with knowledge, I mean, and camera people actually statistically have had more deaths on set than any other profession or craft on sets. So we have to take this stuff very seriously, including the air we breathe.
I was just talking with somebody earlier, in this sort of culture of whatever you got to do to get the shot, and nobody will question if it looks great in the end. But if something goes wrong, who are we going to throw under the bus or whatever? And people think of it, especially these days, people think of it as a stunt issue. Like when I'm coordinating a student film or something. I was just telling somebody else before we got online here that there has not been a thesis film for any university in the city that I've coordinated stunts for where I didn't have to demand a set medic. Like they all just across the board.
No, we'll be okay.
Yeah. Oh, and then it comes to, okay, well, we'll have one on a stunt day. And I'll say, it's not about the stunt day. You could be on location and somebody goes into anaphylactic shock because they get stung by a bee. You could lose a finger in a folding chair, which happened on a Blacklist episode.
I know the gentleman who it happened to.
Yes, and so it's not about the stunt day; it's about planning for failure and having
for safety. Yeah,
and for safety.
I'm not going to mention the show I was working on, but I was working on a show one day, and I kept walking around set one day, and something didn't feel right. They were doing a big stunt and something was going to go on. And I think I may have told the story, but I was looking for a throat lozenge and I kept walking around set and I couldn't find a foot. And for some reason, my throat kept hurting. And I was like, why does my throat still hurt? I need a throat lozenge. And then I realized as I was walking around, I never got a throat lozenge because I didn't see the set medic and he wasn't in his normal spot. And then as they were getting closer and closer to doing this big stunt where they were going to blow someone through a plate glass window and ratchet him and all kinds of shit and throw him on a table and craziness. And then I'm like, oh, maybe he's not in this right spot. And I went and I looked everywhere. And long story short, the medic wasn't there. That day he wasn't supposed to come in and he had someone covering. The guy who was supposed to cover forgot and was on a date. And luckily I called it before they went into it because no one had noticed except for me. And then they were about to go into this big giant scene without a medic on set. And it didn't go wrong, but it didn't go right. And he hit the table weird and they called for the medic. And if they had done that and I didn't say anything beforehand, no medic would have been able to show up. So they actually stopped everything for about an hour or 40 minutes and waited for him to get there. And he showed up in black on black, like a black button down collared shirt, sleeves, pants, and dress shoes. Like he was on a date.
Yeah. I mean, listen, and then you're lucky if you get a qualified medic. If you're on a good production that has a union medic or
well, we have Vinny, and I love it when I see Vinny.
Yes, indeed.
There's no one more qualified than.
But there's the opposite. You're on some indie film, and you're like, "Where's the medic?" And their job is they're just an EMT that takes old folks from home to the shuffleboard game.
I know CPR.
and and
I was a lifeguard.
And many times the state law of will supersede what's in the contract. So the company is only obliged to provide what state law says they can provide. They don't have to go above and beyond.
Well, that's why, I call you Safety Steve for a reason now, because you've taken a stand when it comes to your student films. Like you're like, no, I will not. It's either a medic and me or not me.
Right. They don't get it. But more often than not, the student filmmaker will just not hire me and hire somebody else, and this goes on professional levels too. Often we've all heard stories of you speak up about something and then you're dismissed.
Yes, there's all too often. That's all I'm going to say. All too often.
Yeah.
But
I had that happen to me. I had that happen to me on a job years ago. I was a camera assistant and it was a stunt movie, and there were 4 things that went wrong that night, which could have been deadly. And there was a point where I was pulling focus on squibs on a car hood, like 2 feet away from the lens. So I'm right next to it. And the lens has an optical flat in it to protect the lens, a piece of glass, pure glass. And I'm waiting for goggles. They said, we can't wait. We got to go. Mm-hmm. So I pulled the plug out of the camera and I said, no goggles, no shot. And at the end of the day, my friend, the camera operator, says, guess you're not coming back tomorrow. And I started yelling in front of the cinematographer, who the fuck wants to come back to this job with the way they behaved? And I turned to the cinematographer and yelled at him. And then I said, good night. See you never. And like, that was it, but I think you have to sometimes.
Well, yeah. And this is what it comes down to. I mean, we've all been in situations, every crew member, everybody from every department has probably been in a situation where, there's pressure, there's time, we got to go. And you're questioning, and then sort of the action, we're about to say action, in the back of your head, you're like, I really hope this goes okay. Cause
right. This better not happen. Cause it's all going to go bad. So I like, you shouldn't.
And it's like what Doc said, and we go back a couple episodes with Doc. He's like, are you willing to say something and potentially lose a job over it? But for safety, it's everybody's job to say something.
100%.
Yeah. 100%.
I mean, and not just, sometimes people are like, I'm leaving. This isn't safe. It's such a weird, when people walk it's such a weird thing how do you not notice that you have professionals that are leaving? How does that not ring a bell? Like when 4 or 5 camera guys leave and you're like, whatever, fuck them. What do they know? It's like, what?
Yeah.
You're channeling into the pessimistic side of Steve. So we don't have to go down that rabbit hole. But what I will say is that they notice and they don't care, because it's about making the money.
Yeah.
So we'll just hire somebody else. You can walk. It's fine.
Well, there's an interview, right, about Tom Cruise when he did the Mission Impossible one before this, when he did the run on the building and the backflip around the corner, right? That huge stunt. And he was telling the stunt coordinator, the original stunt coordinator, he's like, hey, I want to do this. And then the guy's like, you can't do that. And he fired him and found someone who would let him do it.
Yeah, well, that's.
I mean, not saying that he couldn't do it, but I'm just saying that it's like, as an example, they're gonna get what they want, and if you can't give it to them, they'll find somebody else who can. And sometimes they will be like, "Okay, you're right." Sometimes they won't, and it's a risk you're gonna have to take.
Yeah,
but I would rather not be there than be there and not have said anything.
Oh, 100%. Have a good conscience.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, I mean that was pretty crazy, that what he brought up, especially the drive home.
Yeah,
that's something that even I forgot to bring up when we were just talking about the importance of certain things. And I have had
overworked, long hours.
It's not even the nighttime driving. It's just the long day. You can go in and start your day at 3 a.m. and work until 5 p.m, and it can be bright out, and you can be on your way home falling asleep at the wheel if the heat's right, the temperature's right. All those things can kind of just help you doze off just for a second, just long enough for your car to drift the line.
Yeah.
And I've had nights where, I'm pretty aware and I don't really play when it comes to that shit, so I'll always just call my wife or call whoever and just I'll pull over and I'll get my 30 winks, I'll stop for 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever, in a rest stop or on the side of the road, make sure I pull over. But I've done it before. And, I've even called my wife. I'm like, I can't make it home. And one time I was literally 20 minutes away from my house.
Yeah.
And I stopped and I shut my eyes, and 2 hours later I woke up.
Well, like they say, right? The most accidents happen close to home, but it's, in the end, it baffles my mind sometimes how we allow certain lapses in safety protocol. In the end, this is just entertainment. This is just for movies and TV. This is not like world peace level stuff. You know what I mean? And it's like legit. Like if only we had the same requirements for us that we have for the youth performers, where the child labor laws say you can only work 8 hours. You cannot do more than 8 hours with a kid, right? Doesn't apply to us.
No. And I think it's like almost each production, or I know that there are standards that when you get a safety ride, and those of you who don't know, a safety ride is when production pays for your ride home from set. So I think it's after a certain time in the morning, and if it's a certain length of day, they will offer you a safety ride in case. So that doesn't happen. Yeah. I don't know the specific requirements though on when it is offered.
Yeah, I mean, listen, that's one of the advantages of taking the van, taking the Transpo, right? Which I almost never do though, because then you're sort of, you know, captive to their schedule.
Right. You're like me. You want to be your own.
Well, but here's the difference is like for us, like generally speaking, we're day players or weekly players or whatever. We're not there day in and day out, right? So when we get a 14-hour day, we're like, oh my God, that's going to be a great paycheck. But we're not doing 14 hours a day every day.
No.
You know what I mean?
You know, we're doing 14 hours. We're going home, we're sleeping in.
Yes, exactly. We don't have to be there. It's not a forced call for us, you know, like whatever.
And if it's, and if it is, you know, a weekly or whatever, there's this weird rush of adrenaline that lasts for a week when you do stunt work for a week. I don't know, you know, and for me, even if the days are long, it's different than when it's your job day in, day out for months and months and months. You don't get a break. Your Friday turns into a Friday. You really only get a Sunday. You're barely catching up on your sleep because you want to spend time with your family. And then Monday morning, you got to be up at 4:30, 5 o'clock for a 6 a.m. call time.
Yeah.
So therefore your rest time is nothing.
Yeah, exactly. And for those listening, we mentioned forced call. A forced call is when they intentionally don't give you the minimum hours of rest time in between days. They're supposed to pay you more for that. You know, you get, like in SAG, at least you get another day's pay on a forced call. If they're going to say like, hey, you know, we know you're supposed to get like 10 hours before you come back, but we're going to just give you 6 because we want to get this shit done.
Well, sometimes it's always a smart, you know, you always know that if they run late, we're not coming in early. So you get kind of happy for that.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, man. But speaking of kids, the next clip is with Larry Rosenthal, episode 20, and where we really, you know what, finding a single clip of Larry's episode that focused entirely on safety was tough because the whole episode
it brushed safety on everything that we talked about.
Really dealt with safety issues and
which
youth.
I think goes into before on why you mentioned why don't we all have those same restrictions over all of us?
Yeah, totally. But so we strung together some clips that we think will give you a good feeling of what it's about to work with child performers and some of the safety issues that come into play working with kids, especially with stunts.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Cousins for Life, because there was that fight scene in there, and we linked it in the show notes between the green, I guess it's kind of like a Power Ranger thing, right? Like the yellow Ranger and the green fighter, the Green Ranger girl. So when you're, I mean, we know nothing about coordinating a kid show. So, but when you take us through the process, you get a script and there's a fight in it. What happened? What's your next step?
Well, to take it one quick step back further.
Yeah, please do.
The biggest thing is with working on kid shows is that a lot of times these kids, they all come up to the coordinator. Oh, I want to do my own stunts. And it's not that they can or can't. It's really, I think, for the coordinator to determine, first of all, but I'll tell you that process in a second. But it's also it's taking them to the side and explaining to them. And you say to them, hey, it's not that I can't trust that you can or can't do it, but do you see all these 80 to 100 people around you working on the show? And God forbid, if you get hurt accidentally while trying to do a stunt, then all these people are going to be out of work, for a couple months until you're back healthy and able to come back to work. So I've always had that opening with all the kids I've ever worked with, so that they understand why I don't let them do too much. But there definitely has been occasions where I have let them do it. And as you saw in the Cousins footage, there's a lot of insert shots we did with the actors. So when I see the script and I determine if the child actor is, first of all, capable of doing it in my own mind, just knowing them and working around them for a while, seeing what abilities they do have.
Right.
Then I will go to the line producer and say, you know what, I'm comfortable if you are with me talking to the parent and then the kid about doing the stunt. So if he's okay, he or she, the line producer, is okay with it, then I'll usually talk to the parent and the kid at the same time. Always go through the parents. I never, sidestep a minor's parent. And I explained to him, I said, this is how we're going to do it. I want the parent right there. And I walk them through the procedure of the fight from start to finish so that the parent is comfortable with it before I let the child say, yes, I want to do it. Of course, I always want to do it. But, the parent has to be comfortable with it as their guardian, obviously.
So when you're walking them through the fight, are you doing that with doubles that you've already kind of worked out the choreography? Or are you just walking them through it like, this is where this will happen, this is where that will happen?
Both actually. Because if I will always have doubles come in and do the whole fight, but I try to get the actor involved as soon as possible because I want them to be able to, like they act with their mouths, to be able to act with their bodies and do the stunts, as we know, as well, to sell, to sell everything. So
is there anything that's just a hard no?
Oh yeah, there's been many.
Like, are there lines that like cannot be crossed when it comes to kids and stunts?
Well, it's all judgment, I would say, starting with the coordinator. So yeah, there's been definitely some hard no's when I'll just bring in a stunt double because I just won't. I don't want to jeopardize the chance. If there's the slightest chance of a kid slipping on the floor and doing a hard fall to their back, hitting their head or something like that, I won't do it. If I can cheat a mat in there and and catch the kid or something, that's a different story because I'll do a bunch of those and I teach the kids how to fall the proper way in the mats. If they're just taking a fall, like a hard pass of something thrown at them and they have to catch it and then fall back. But like, if it has to do with traveling, like for instance, on a hand pull or a ratchet, I won't ever put an actor on that. If it's elevating them up in the air, sure. I mean, I usually have no problem with that. I have a lot of kids' harnesses. I'll get, if I don't, I'll have one specifically made for that size of that kid. And, that kind of stuff, raising them up in the air. Like I did one of my first shows I coordinated was Austin and Ellie, one of the top Disney shows for 4 years. And I got to recreate the Mission Impossible scene where he's coming down from the museum and then I have to bring the kid down and stop him just before hitting the bottom of the ground. So
yeah, that's in the reel that you sent us. That'll be in the show notes too.
Okay.
Definitely check that out. Yeah.
So that's one where I know I have him completely secure. He's in a harness. I got ankle harnesses on him. I got him picked in the shoulders. I got him picked in the back. And then it all comes up to the middle, which is the line that he's on. So for something like that, and he loved it, of course, he didn't want to get off. Those are the easier things to do. But if it's a hand pull or if it's a ratchet, anything where it's going to do a hard jerk on them, that's the hard nose for me. Yeah.
Because watching the reels, I mean, obviously we were saying before we got on, it's like I don't watch a lot of kid shows, but watching the reels and then some of the episode scenes and stuff on YouTube, it's pretty cool. It seems like it's all the classic stunts,
the classic gags,
right? It's like pulls and falls and
over the
flat
table,
backs
over the bar,
through tables, and
something going through a window.
Like on 3 separate episodes, we saw the car crashing through the wall. You know,
and that one actually I brought in all doubles. I mean, I probably could have put a couple of the actors in the back seat. But talking with the producer, he just said, let's get all doubles, and that's fine. But the fact that you get to crash a car through a wall on a soundstage, that hardly ever happens, So the fact, especially on a kid show.
One thing that I noticed when I was watching the kid shows is when they show the fall, right? So they'll show like the fall and then they'll show the person get up. But the one thing that you don't see very often is the impact. And is that basically because having a kid there and trying to show that you would have to have the kid do it? Or is it just easier to just been like, yep, everybody knows they're down, they're up. They fall behind the thing and then they kind of get up. If they fall behind the table, they'll fall behind the table and then they'll pop up.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
is that, sorry.
No, that's okay. I should have let you finish the question.
No, that's kind of was the first. I guess.
No, I was going to say this is because we've seen the baddies take hard falls. The guys like in that episode of Warped where they're like in the sort of Star Wars bar.
Oh yeah,
they're doing like slipping on the slime and doing back falls and stuff like
and
that.
And then you saw them; they were hitting the ground and they were hitting the backs. But a lot of times when you see the good guys, or whatever, there's a lot of the cheats, or I guess you could call the Texas switch.
Well, a lot of switches,
a lot of switches.
Yeah,
I feel.
I mean, if it comes to a child actor hitting the ground from standing up or higher, no, I would never let them do that. So a lot of times, like you said, I'll have them fall out of frame. You'll cut to them seeing it. Or what I can do is cheat is I have 3/4 of their body lying down, and then they come to the last part of their upper body, just, touching the ground when they're like an inch or two off. That's all cheat. Otherwise, if the director wants to see the hit on the ground, then it's always going to be a double. I'm never going to have a child performer hit the ground, obviously, for many reasons.
So that's great. That's one of those hard lines that is a no.
Yes. For me, it is.
Yeah.
Yes. I would believe it's the same with most coordinators who are doing the Disney and the Nickelodeon shows. Safety to me is the most important thing. I will go through things. I have no problem walking up to you, Steven, and say, hey, okay, you know what you're doing here now. Is there anything you see that could be a possible concern? Because what I see is another thing too, is I offer the opportunity for the performers to speak up. I said, this is to me, we work together as a team. I'm not your boss per se, but we work together as a team. I don't have a problem if you have a question about anything, you come and ask me. If you want to ask me to the side, take me to the side. Let's talk about it. And that happens a lot, actually, because some people, especially the new people, they just want to do this stunt and they're afraid to ask questions. They're afraid to speak up. And I think it's so important to do that. So from being overprotective on kid shows, which is, maybe I am, also being a dad as well. Maybe that also tends to kick in as well. But to bringing that to the adults, I think, that's my biggest thing is safety first. And, because I've been on some crazy shows and, I don't want to mention names or directors or producers, but I've been on some multi-million-dollar movies where they don't give you time to rehearse. You're lucky if there's one stunt team ahead of the main team that's coming in to shoot. You're lucky if you even have time to set it up half the time. And I've seen many unfortunate accidents because of that, not having time to rehearse, not setting things up properly or efficiently or safely. And that happens, unfortunately, in several of the major features that I've worked on, and, including to myself.
I'm curious, are there any, and this is total just out of not knowing at all, not having worked on kid shows or anything, but having worked in my old life in pediatrics with kids, is there any protocol in terms of background checking or anything like that? Who's going to work with the kids? Are there any other safety issues about working with kids on set? Not stunt safety, but just safety. Like, who are we going to hire? Can they be with kids? Can they not be with kids? All that kind of stuff.
That's a good question, actually. The entire crew actually does go through a background check. I have to fill out a form, and then they send it out to a company that does a background check on all the regular crew. I don't think they do that with the day players. I'd like to believe that they don't. But for the regular crew that's, on pretty much the whole season, they do background checks on all the crew to make sure there aren't any issues, with regards to things like that, which I think is a good idea, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Because we had to do that obviously in pediatrics and, all that kind of who's working with your kids kind of thing.
Well, yeah.
And a lot of times too, when I'm working with the kid actors, I want the parents there. If not the parent, the studio teacher. One of those two always have to be there with me whenever I'm doing anything with the kids.
Yeah, that was really interesting. So I cut you off. Same time.
But you know what? Even when we did that episode, when we recorded that episode, I learned so much. Dude, because I've never worked with kids like that.
Yeah, and the hard nose was pretty interesting. But there are just certain things you know.
Yeah, certain things he will not do. He will not let a kid hit the ground. Yeah, it was very interesting. It also how he approaches it, and similar to
hold on. Before I just want to go into that, is that with the hard nose, right? Yeah. If you're a big enough of an actor, they have hard nose in their contracts.
Sure.
Which I don't know why it made me think about that. I'm like, but that's kind of interesting that an individual can probably go back to a past experience he had on set and then put in his contract like, hard no, I'm never doing this again.
Yeah.
Like Ed Harris with the going under the water and James Cameron, and he almost died. He'll never talk about it, but he'll never do it again.
Right.
Like,
yeah. I mean, it was interesting, right? Because even, let's say, even the kid, he talked a lot. Sometimes the kids want to do it, and the parents or the teacher or the guardian is okay with the kid doing it, but he's like, nope. Even if the kid can do it, right? And then it comes back to like what we talk about all performers. It's like not only is it a minor, but it's also jeopardizing the production as a whole. Like if the kid gets hurt,
you have to go through what if, and then take it to the worst possible what if, and then really like, okay, that can't happen.
Well, that's part of the safety culture. In fact, I talked a lot about this at the class I just taught at SVA. Is like you should have fun with the what ifs. Like you're going into a production and you've got a scene that is potentially dangerous or even not, but challenge each other to come up with what's the most craziest what if that you can figure out, the most unlikely crazy thing that could go wrong. And it probably can go wrong. If you can think of it, it can go wrong.
So with the baby, right? My head goes, so we had these, the stackable boxes, right? And they're square and they've got the clear coating on them, right? And they go from, like 1 inch to 10 and they get bigger and bigger. Yeah. And the biggest box is solid, like to the point of where I think I could stand on it.
Yes.
And I'm like, and the corners are sharp. And all I'm thinking is the baby just falling backwards. And I was like, if she hits the back of her head, like in that soft spot, like right on, I don't know what could happen. I'm not a doc. I'm like, but I don't want that happening. Yeah. So I mentioned it to my wife and I was like, she can't be alone with these.
Yeah.
And then she's like, I would have never, I'm like something so like cardboard, but four sides of it together makes a solid frame, and a corner of that would hurt anybody.
And one of the questions asked in the SVA class was about the safety briefing, right before you shoot a scene, and what should be included in it. And I'm like, kind of like what you're talking about. It's like the safety briefing is not the time where you think about this shit. You should be having pre-production meetings where you tabletop these potential issues.
The logistics meeting. Yes, that's what that's for.
Where you get creative and think about what can go wrong, what can go wrong. If it does go wrong, how are we going to handle it? What's the plan? You plan for failure. And once you have that plan in place, that's what happens in the safety meeting. The safety meeting is like, hey, if shit hits the fan, the medic takes over. We follow his direction. This is the quickest way out to get to the ambulance. This is our egress route. It's like everything should be planned.
Right. One of the this is like a basic thing, but it also goes into it. When I did a fall on a set, and majority of the set were not English speaking, and one of the things that I added into the safety meeting was that the English speaking PA is the first person who makes it to me. Exactly. Because if I say I don't want to be moved, I need to make sure everybody understands.
Exactly. It's like these are the kind of things that you have to have discussions about. When I started working on the committee, the SAG-AFTRA committee, and we started looking into set medic national standards and stuff. First thing I did was I went to OSHA incident reports and looked at all the citations. So let's be honest, there is a culture in this industry where people don't want to report. They don't want to say anything. They're worried that they might, like from a stunt performer perspective, we don't want people to think that we've been injured longer than we're actually injured and maybe not get hired. People don't want to make an official report because they have to go on workman's comp, which is notoriously shitty insurance. Why would I go on workman's comp when I have really good SAG-AFTRA health insurance, right? So there's all these, or just the fear of being blacklisted and not being hired because you rock the tree. So there's a lot of reasons why people don't report stuff, but stuff does get reported. And if you go to OSHA and look at the citations of what they discovered, was in the majority of these cases that I read about, there were no risk assessments and there were no plans in case things went wrong. You know what I mean? This is like a massive, massive hole in our industry. Like I've spoken to people, I said, how do you write your risk assessments? And they're like, what? Risk assessment? What's that? I'm like, that is an essential thing. Like sometimes your insurance provider will ask for it, but even if they don't, you should have it to cover your ass at the bare minimum to say, we considered the risks and planned for them, and all this happens before the safety meeting. You shouldn't be at the safety meeting like wondering, like, what should I talk about here? No, this should all have been discussed before. And along those lines, we got Brett Coates next, talking about rigging, stunt rigging, and performer rigging, performer flying.
This is one of the areas that more people think about safety.
Yeah. And Doc actually brought that up. Not so much in this clip, or maybe it did come up in this clip, but he brought up the fact that on the big setups, everybody's so hyper focused on safety.
Right.
But it's on the smaller setups, the quote unquote easy ones are the more common ones where people get complacent.
Or when someone's checking it out.
Yeah. And so that's when you should step back.
A rehearsal.
And say, hey, I mean, when I took rigging 101 and 102 with Brett way back in like 2015 or whatever, 10 years ago, one of the first things he said was, you must plan for rescue. You have to plan for rescue, and I've been guilty of not even asking about that on sets, because I myself, I've felt the pressure.
Yep.
Like, well, if this goes wrong,
so we have it set up.
How are you going to get me if I'm hanging?
It's like
30 feet in the air.
We've gone through all of the precautions to make sure nothing goes wrong.
Yeah.
Right. But then, what if it does? But and I don't mean like not, because we just said that that's what you do. You talk about the what ifs, but then you can what if a what if.
Well, I think what you're saying is people assume it's going to work.
Exactly.
Yeah. They assume we planned for this and it's all going to work the way we planned.
And then when it doesn't work and there's no failure and then a guy's hanging off the building, what do we do when it has completely failed?
Yeah.
Even when all of the what ifs are in, like, who knows what happens?
Yep.
Then you need to plan for that too.
Yeah, totally. Cool. So let's see what Brett has to say about safety.
All right, Brett, let's go.
So this actually, I was on set once. I'm not gonna bring up what set or any names, and they were pulling somebody, and every single time the pull happened, it was kind of different. Yeah. And then they finally just decided to shoot it, and they were just like, okay, we're gonna go. And one of the rigging people mentioned to me, they're like, this is why if you're going to do something even as simple as a pull, you have to get someone who knows how to be pulled, because if they don't, it's going to happen differently every single time. So sometimes they would catch air, sometimes they would be dragged, sometimes they would go 3 feet, sometimes they would go 2 feet. Right. And then basically I heard the rigger just being like, it doesn't matter how we do it, it's them. Just shoot it. The rhetoric on set was basically, it was the rigging guy's fault and he should have found a way to get her in the air, period.
So I guess the real question to Brett would be like about research and development and being able to replicate a gag. Yeah.
It would not be uncommon in any aspect, whether it be movie and TV or live shows or circus or anything else, that not everybody that's involved is as aware of what it is they're doing and how they're able to communicate with other people. How many of us, including me, are getting away with things long enough that we think that gives us a certain amount of skill level to continue to do it, when they haven't really learned to be a student of what it is they're doing. And so, yeah, I mean, if that question was posed to me, is it the performer? It's one of us or both of us, right? And maybe you could have maybe a different puller, a better puller. Like, pulling is a skill. If you've done a bunch of stunts, you've probably just seen big guys pull a rope really hard in one direction as hard as they can. But if you're going to do anything more complicated than that, knowing that you can give extra pull at the beginning, but then slow down on the second half, or maybe you creep up in the beginning. Maybe if you creep up in the beginning to pick them up off the ground a little bit, and then you pull them hard. Like, there are things in pulling, the more you do it, you can start to see it. And then the hardest part about that is you've got two people doing two different things. Unless you put them on a machine, unless you put that performer on a ratchet or a winch, like, something's going to be different each time. The only way to guarantee one of you's not doing something different is for one of them to be a machine. We did a live show in Germany where we had a performer who was on a winch that had bungee attached to it. And so the bungee would stretch, the winch would stretch the bungee, and the performer would shoot up in the air, and they were dancing around the stage and choreographing. The hardest part about that is you can't land that performer, because when they land, the bungee is stretching, and the winch has to catch up to them. In the meantime, somebody has to hold them. So every time she flew, the other dancers on the stage had to go over and catch that performer and hold her in place so that they could move on to the next thing. This was, look, your expression is correct. So we worked on this. We worked on this for 3 months. We did it 100% without stopping maybe 2 days before the show opened, because it's the winch has to do a thing. The bungee reacts differently, slightly differently each time. Like, we were doing all of our style on the machine part of it, because all what we didn't need is we didn't need the dancers to hold on to her for 1 second too long, because that was going to change everything. And it was a programmable winch. So the machine was going to do what it's going to do the same every time, which doesn't give you any chance to adapt it. So coming back to it, we were just trying to get the machine to be exactly the same every time, so that the performers can count on the fact that the machine's going to be the same every time.
What do you think is most dangerous? I feel like there's kind of like 3 things that you're either pulling someone off the ground, keeping them in the air, or landing them on the ground. Which do you think is kind of the most dangerous
of those 3?
Of those 3, keeping
landing
someone
them.
Suspended or landing. Okay, that's what I was thinking. Why?
So
is that?
You're probably looking at it more from a stuntman view. So everything's got to. Most of what you're doing is wanting to look violent, right? If you're going to land somebody on the ground, it's going to be a violent landing. Even if it's a superhero landing, they're coming in with some amount of energy. And that's where you're really finessing. You know, you want them to come in at a certain speed. You want it to look a certain way. They've got to. You want to give their body weight back to them. You know, so that they can create that pose. But you're definitely running them into something that's not going to move. Right.
Well, nothing hits harder than the ground.
Probably the second part of that is that I've definitely. People can get really excited about moving performers really quickly and maybe not paying attention to what happens after they leave the stage or the frame that they're in, like what happens over there. Because the next thing is they're going to hit something over there. One of the things we deal with a lot in fall protection, stopping people from falling on things, is there's lots of places to clip into, but it's very hard for people to think about, once I clip into it and I fall and I start swinging, what do I run into? Because you swing faster than you fall.
Explain.
So you're going to hit the wall. Physics, depending on where you are, you have to pick up speed over 12 feet to fall at a fast enough rate. You're speeding up the whole time, but a swing fall propels you faster. You'll swing into a wall faster than you will fall 12 feet.
I'm testing the theory.
I just got teabagged by a monkey.
It's like everything else. The obvious thing is this. Everybody's worried about the height. Everybody's worried about the fall, right? That's all they're looking at. But there are probably 10 other things that are also happening that are dangerous. That's a good question. Putting people down. Up is easy. Everybody understands how up goes.
Right.
Holding them up there is easy. Putting them down, you want to put them down on purpose in a way that works out.
Sure.
I feel like, to find that common ground of aggressive but soft, it's got to be pretty tough, to make it look like they do that superhero landing when the dust fucking comes out from underneath them. They got to look like they hit the ground right in order to make that happen. So it's got to, that.
But that's all. I mean,
is that like?
I'm not a rigger, but that's controlled. Like, that's a controlled descent.
I was going
right?
to say, do they control descent that on some type of a system or?
This would be one where I would ask, like, how bad do you want to see this? Right. And now we know. Look, I've definitely
Scarlett Johansson Avengers.
Right. But we can get that. We can get that by dropping the performer most of the way and stopping them above the ground. And then they could jump up in the air and hit the ground. And you can now, with the technology we have, you can match those two together.
Right.
It is. Look, some people are really good at it.
Video games.
Yeah. Some people are really good at it and some people aren't. But if you're trying to match, I think you'll see if you watch a bunch of behind the scenes stuff, dropping people is fine, but I think you'll only rarely see that they come all the way to the ground. It's way easier for me to stop somebody 5 feet off the ground or 10 feet off the ground than it is to really work on matching that, that decelerator to match up with them landing on the ground. That takes a lot of practice, and yeah, I'd steer away from it. I'd find 3 other ways to do it. I definitely got to ask, can I drop somebody off a bridge in 4 feet of water, and they have to hit the water? And the coordinator and I went through just a lot of different ways to do it in the scenarios that are doing it. And I'm like, look, the best way to do this is to make it multiple shots. Like, are you, right. And not every stunt guy thinks that way. Not every flying director thinks that way. They get excited and they're like, what a great stunt for us to do. You know, how exciting we get to do this big stunt where we drop somebody into 4 feet of water and it looks awesome. Unless you're marketing the movie on that, I think you're just doing something really dangerous for
like an Assassin's Creed, where they really did a huge marketing on the movie when that guy jumped like 150 feet.
Yeah,
that that fall was a huge part of the marketing for that.
Yeah, you're doing something specific. You're doing something specific for a specific reason like that. Whether the movie was any good or not, everybody remembers that, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to stop Tom Cruise from jumping his thing. Like, that's part of the marketing now. But look, high falls have just about gone away since the wires came in. So who's doing high falls and why? Because they're obviously quite a bit more risky than just lowering somebody. And I'm not even, the way digital technology looks now, I don't know why we would drop somebody at full speed. Like, why do we ever have to free fall anyone? If we want, first of all, the human being watching it can't tell. They don't know what a full speed human being looks like. And why not just have them on a device the entire way down? You know, would be something I would say. I don't know why certain people are agreeing to do things that add a level of danger that they don't need to. And I don't know why productions are letting them, and I don't know why they're not. I don't know. I wish people would want to be more of a student of things, but I think it's exciting. Look, I want to be a stunt guy, and I want to tell people I'm a stunt man, and so I want to do a stunt. Like, we're going to do a stunt, right? I mean, that's what you're there for. And we've all been trained. We're only 1 generation away from people that would have, or 2 generations away from when they would have thrown kerosene on somebody and tried to put them out fast enough.
Sure.
Like, the danger level was a lot, the technology just didn't exist. Even the most accomplished stunt riggers you will run into, maximum of maybe 20 years of experience, maximum, right? Because before the Matrix, it didn't exist in the way we think about it now.
I love how he went into something that we talked about before, which is the secrecy, not saying anything. It's scary that, and then you're probably going to be the most quiet guy on set, knowing that when something goes wrong, knowing that you didn't say anything. Because who are you going to be? You're going to be like, well, yeah, I kind of noticed.
Well, yeah.
And then you're the asshole.
Well, not only that, but we've all been in situations in life where we wanted to say something and didn't, and something happened. And I don't know about everybody else, but I completely feel guilt-ridden. Like, I should have fucking said something.
Yep.
You know what I mean? It's happened in my life as a coach, as a combat sports coach. It's happened, like, I should have said something.
Like, sometimes, you're letting 2 of your guys, they're sparring and they go a little hard, but you're like, you know what? They're fine.
Yeah.
They're under control. And then all of a sudden someone steps into a kick and gets knocked out. You're like, damn it, I should have said something.
Yep. So, yeah, definitely that is the case. And, Brett said, and this is where we got the title for this episode, secrecy and safety cannot coexist. Right? You can't have them both existing in the same world. If there's secrecy, de facto, it's not safe. So you need to be open and talking about everything. For sure. Which leads us to our final clip, which is Scott Boyette.
And that leads into pretty much everything that's led into this conversation, which is weapon safety.
Weapon safety. Scott is a firearms expert, licensed armorer in California. He teaches actors. He is
something with weapons history as well.
Well, his parents, he was raised in this industry, right? His parents were antique weapons dealer.
Yeah, that's right.
And so his very first job when he was pursuing acting in England was he made money by going to auctions and buying antique weapons and stuff. So he was raised around antique weapons. Dude, the dude's resume is massive.
Right? I had so much fun when we went to LA.
He's a graduate of the LA Sheriff's Academy. He is working right now as an EMT in real ambulance.
He does it all.
And I've trained with him a bunch. I introduced you to him. We trained together. It was a great episode, but this clip towards the end of the episode, we start talking about weapons on set safety. And again, it kind of ties into what we talked about before, which is like the protocol is there.
Yes. Well, this is where he brings it up. Is it in this clip?
Yeah, it's in this clip.
He brings up the 4 rules that were broken, and well, he goes into it. I'm going to let him do it.
We'll let you guys listen to it, and we'll talk about it after. All right, so let's take it to Scott. What are your thoughts on set safety, firearms, the sort of what's going on right now?
Sure. I will say, first off, our safety record as a whole for people that are armorers, if you think of the amount of production that happens, just say in the United States alone, everywhere it happens, you think of all of the shows that you've seen that involve firearms, and the amount of accidents and the amount of things that happen versus the number of weapons that are fired every day on a set. I mean, we have a stellar safety record.
Oh, sure.
For the most part.
We always say more people have died on sets from rigging accidents, other types of accidents than firearm accidents. You know.
Now, as far as the rust, the 4 safety rules were broken, and they were broken. The thing is, you have the 4 safety rules. You treat every weapon as if it's loaded. Keep your finger off the trigger. You know your target, and you don't put your finger on the trigger until you're ready to fire. Right. So those are the 4 safety.
Hold on. Not one of 4. 4. All of them.
So let me explain this to you. So you can break 3 of those 4 rules and still be safe. In order for a negligent discharge to occur, all 4 of those to hurt somebody, all 4 of those must be broken. The problem with breaking those 4 rules is it can happen in a nanosecond, and that's what happened. The 4 rules were broken. The pistol was pointed at something it wasn't willing to destroy, right? The finger, he claims he didn't put the finger on the trigger. I mean, you can put a 1873 Colt Peacemaker fully loaded with a round in the chamber, which you're not supposed to do, on a table and leave it there for 1,000 years. It will not go off. It just won't go off. Yeah. It's an inanimate object. It's a rock, my opinion. But he broke all 4 of the rules, and he broke them like that, and someone died. So, yep. I mean, that's the thing. So we have those 4 safety rules, plus we have protocols.
Plus all the protocols that were broken leading up to that point where he could.
To the fact that the round was even able to be put in the weapon.
Oh my God. I don't care if Jesus himself comes down and says, I want live ammunition on the set. I will tell him no. Absolutely not. Yeah. No, under no circumstances. Now we do have dummy rounds that do not have dimpled primers. Those do happen. And I have a couple of them over here. But those are kept in a very separate place, well marked, locked up, and very specifically, I mean, again, and we have eyes on, and you never do that. I mean, the protocol is, here's this, we're going to concur that these are these, we have a count right here. We're counting, I mean, especially since Brandon Lee and everything that happened there. But, there's protocols that happen with those that it happen, the same way we do things with blanks and that kind of thing. So, we're very, very, very careful. And,
I guess rather than diving into rust, though, I'm curious, like if you had your druthers and they said to you, how should we change, or should we even change safety protocols? So the problem with like OSHA and ANSI and all this stuff, the protocol is great, or even the industry-wide safety bulletin for firearms, which we'll link to the show notes. That stuff often doesn't even come into play till after the accident happens, right? Then somebody goes back, oh, you violated this, you violated that, you violated this. So how, in your estimation, can we make sets safer, even if we didn't change the protocol, right? What can we do to
just enforce the protocol? I mean, look, enforcing the protocol is hard because you have big stars, you have big actors, you have actors who, I mean, look, me coming to Keanu Reeves after a take and saying, can I have your weapon now? I will take your weapon. Thank you. I have your weapon. because we're in between takes, and I will hold on to that and I will check it and make sure that it is set to go exactly in the same sequence, knowing that if he was at slide lock in the last shot, based on the script supervisor, that he needs to be slide locked for this shot. Or if he's not at slide lock and he's slide locked now, then we need to fix that. I mean, there's little things, but enforcing the protocols is one thing, and it's hard because you have egos, you have big stars that claim they have weapons training and don't talk to me. And you have to be an asshole and be willing to get fired. And people have not been fired, but other people I know have been fired because they have insisted on protocols, and the star goes, "Get this mother effer out of my face. I know what I'm doing." And then, I've watched TV shows where the editor didn't have anything but a guy clearing rooms at slide lock because that's all he had. And there wasn't anybody on set that could tell them, look, you can't do this. And ultimately, if you're able to tell the director, what's that?
For the listeners, no, just so people listening that may not know what slide lock is, that visually the gun is empty. That's
the slide is locked back, and it's empty and not able to fire. It's out. It's very obviously out of ammunition.
Yeah.
So it's hard, but being able to having an environment where you can enforce the protocols is a good step.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, like you said, it's a big part of it is a cultural thing. And film, I think even more than theater is still, not that I have a lot of experience in theater, but talking to people in theater is more cowboy Wild West still. And one of my earliest jobs, the co-star was horseplaying with his gun, and I was rookie, and I walked over to him and very politely, and I was like, "Hey, man, do you mind holstering that?" I just gave him a little 411 on, don't point at anybody, treat it like it's loaded, blah, 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 blah. And he was actually very thankful. He's like, "I've never held a gun in my life before this day." But then when I got back to hanging with the senior stunt guys and other people, they're like, "Yo, don't go talk to the actors like that." Right. And I'm like, that's not your place. And I'm like, listen, this dude's swinging a gun around. Right. I'm going to go stop it. I don't care if it's above my pay grade or whatever.
Yeah. So changing that culture is would be a really big step, because there is a pecking order, and you're not supposed to talk to the actors. But as an armorer, if you come up and you tell them that, hey, stop screwing around and stop pointing that at the first AC, your eye line is here, and your line, don't point that directly at the camera. And the actor goes, who is this guy telling me what to do? Well, that's a cultural thing that now we have a safety violation, right?
Yeah, we say all the time.
A lot of times, just like you said, you got to not give a fuck about getting fired, but sometimes it's good to have, like, I know when I work with Steve, and when we're on set and he's the coordinator and I'm helping him out, there's sometimes where I'm just kind of overwatching and just kind of overlooking everything because he's so focused on certain things, and then I'll just been like,
that happened on the student film.
And then it's like, oh yeah, and I feel like an armor kind of needs that guy all the time. They should just have that guy that's like,
yeah.
Well, that's why when I said, I think Steve, when we did that first class, and part of our safety brief is you are all range safety officers, every last one of you, and if anyone sees anything, raise your hand. And that's something when I give the safety brief on set, I give that same brief. If anyone feels unsafe, if anyone feels something that is unsafe, feel free to raise your hand. I will address it. You won't be yelled at, but it's absolutely for everyone's safety. If you see something or you feel unsafe with something, please, raise your hand and come talk to us. So yeah, everyone's an RSO.
It's like what Brett Koepfer said in his episode, safety and secrecy cannot exist in the same universe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
Don't be afraid to call someone out. Yeah.
Yeah. Dude, I love Scott.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've known Scott for like 20 plus years. We started in Kung Fu together way back in the day.
That's awesome. That's
when
amazing.
He was living in New York. So, yeah, I mean, and he makes all the points about, one, he's right. The safety record with firearms on set is really impeccable.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when's the last death due to a firearm on set before Rust? It's like Brandon Lee, right? I mean, at least in America. There's been others. There was one in Australia. There was a music video where a guy, there was also something in
the shotgun, right?
Yeah, the shotgun. There was some debris in the shotgun.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that kind of what happened to Brandon Lee? Wasn't there something in the barrel?
Well, Brandon Lee's was the Yeah, it was the blank.
There was like, I don't know what the actual story was, but I heard.
I think it was the crimped piece of metal from the front
from
of
a blank that they used in loading this from another scene.
Yes.
And then they never cleared the barrel properly.
Right. Something like that.
Yeah.
But anyway, Scott made the point that the safety record is really good. And when there is a problem, you're breaking the protocol, you know?
And I love how he went into the 4 rules that if you like all 4 rules had to be broken, not 1, not 2, not 3.
Yeah.
4.
There were so many steps along the way in Rust that so many violations along the way that at any one point, if somebody had done one thing,
that's what's so amazing is hearing that from Brett is like so many things went wrong for that to happen.
And again, it's like the protocol's there. It just needs to be followed. And it's like what we said before, right? There are standards written for all this stuff that unfortunately oftentimes don't come into play until after there's an incident. You know,
well, I think that also probably a reason why it's hard for them to point the finger because of all of that there are so you didn't do this, so then it turns into a you know, which is what we're seeing is this giant finger pointing game.
Yeah, that's what happened. There's an incident, and then everybody wants to find who is the culprit, and nobody wants to say we're all the culprit because you know, this is everybody likes to talk about collaboration when it's a success on the film, but nobody wants to talk about collaboration when we fucked up, like we all fucked up. You know what I mean? And
that's funny.
It's true though. We're all a team when things work, but we're not when things go wrong. And then, you know, there's an incident and now we're going to point fingers and see who can we blame. And, you know, we didn't mention it before, but coming up on this season, we have the director of the Safe Sets documentary.
Yes, we do.
Which right now is going through festivals and getting rave reviews. And it is about the unsafeness of film sets.
And in a perfect world, we hopefully will be doing a live event for this.
We are. Yeah, we can't make promises, but we're talking to them about doing our next live show, which will be a screening of the Safe Sets documentary here in New York. So hopefully that will happen sometime this year, earlier in the first half of the year. Let's hope. But I can't wait for that episode too. That'll be later in the season, probably like maybe midway through the season or something like that.
Well, we haven't seen it yet.
He just sent us the screener. He just sent us the screener.
Great.
So we'll definitely watch it, but we're not interviewing him for like 6 weeks from now or something.
Right.
So we've got some time. But it's an important discussion that has to happen. And the unfortunate thing, I think it's going to take things like his documentary to inspire like a greater discussion, you know, like take the hashtag Me Too stuff, right? Like that inspired a change in the industry. COVID inspired a rapid change in the industry. Like the industry can fucking change. You know what I mean? It can
sometimes
respond,
it just needs a fucking kick in the pants.
But none of the horrible incidents that we've seen regarding set safety has inspired a movement.
You have little movements when it happens, but then it dies out.
But not culture changing. Like now, intimacy coordinators, all that stuff is a cultural change it's carved in stone now. Same with the same thing. Look how fast the COVID compliance protocols came into place and were enacted. Nothing like that has happened over set safety when it comes to mortality, injuries, this kind of stuff. We need something to inspire that kind of movement. And I don't think it's going to come. It can't come from within the union system because just like the finger pointing amongst individuals, unions, as much as we all like to think of ourselves as brothers and stuff, I think we don't always play nice together.
Right.
So I think somebody from the outside, something like this documentary, would be really good to inspire a conversation that takes place outside any of the individual, departments. It needs to be a collaborative, global thing. That's why I love that work group that I'm on for Weapons on Set, because on the work group, we got the AMPTP, we got members of the DGA, we got the IATSE members, we've got stage, screen, all different people all working together for one common goal of making a safer set, right? But we need a movement within the industry that will inspire people to think about this stuff all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Maybe this documentary can do that.
That's what I'm hoping, or at least get it started, get the ball rolling. So I'm looking forward to that interview and hopefully a live show.
Yeah, I'm excited. You want to know what's also really cool is I just realized that as a geek and a longtime nerd and someone who loves early release stuff, it's really cool that this is our first screening that we're having someone give us before it comes out to watch, to review.
Oh yeah, this is our first advanced.
I'm like, this is our first advanced screening like that we're getting like because of the podcast. I think that's kind of cool.
Yeah, totally. Preston's was kind of like that, but we're in it, so it doesn't really count.
Right.
This is like it is a little bit of a milestone for us.
That's
somebody's letting us see their movie before it's distributed.
Right? That's kind of cool.
So that is pretty cool. But on that note, we will see everybody in 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks for season 2
with Riley Stearns.
There's no wait with us.
No, we're going right to it. No breaks. Yeah. Riley Stearns and the Art of Self-Defense. I can't wait. Man.
Oh, it's going to be such a good episode.
We'll see you in 2 weeks, guys.
Have a good one.
Film Fights with Friends is brought to you by Breakfall Studios. Executive producers Stephen Koepfer, Paul Varacchi, Thiago Benedetti. Produced by Press Record Studios with Matthew Kaplowitz and Richard Butler. Associate producers Becca G.T. and Jared DeCrose. Edited by Matthew Kaplowitz. Associate producers Becca G.T. and Jared DeCrose. Edited by Matthew Kaplowitz. Original music by Aru Luster.